Chatback on RCV News.
The time in Central Africa is 9:28, and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Chatback right here on your number one radio station, Radio Christian Voice. My name is Angel Kasavo, and great to know that you are on board this morning. And just a reminder that for Facebook, we are live on RCV News. Remember, RCV News is a platform where we do post everything current affairs. So go to your Facebook and search for RCV News. Get liking and get sharing that page. Then also the number is 0956-200-490. This morning we do host economic analyst Mr. Yusuf Dodia, and this morning we are having a conversation around his 2024 economic outlook for the country. Mr. Dodia, good morning and welcome to Chatback.
Good morning, Angel. It's always great to be with you.
Yep, we haven't hosted you this year. I remember the last time that we had you on the program was the 1st of December.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was actually just having a conversation with one of our listeners, and I told them, look, for the year 2024, I kind of feel, as a nation, we're going to move to this certain direction. And then they told me, no, you're lying. Not until we hear it from Mr. Dodia. So I thought, you know what, have a conversation with them so that maybe they're on board also.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, it's great to have you here. All right, so for starters, let's start, I think, with the performance of the Kwacha. We've seen that the Kwacha, has made some gains this month compared to how this month started, February. It was trading for around 27 Kwacha per dollar. But now, according to some banks and bureaus, we are trading around 23, 22 Kwacha per dollar. And the question really maybe that we could start with is what is behind this, appreciation of the Kwacha?
Well, thank you. It's an interesting question because it may have different answers. And in fact, there are different perceptions out there. I've heard comments of it being artificially set and so forth. But I think if we look at the mechanisms at play, there could be three. Mm-hmm. The first one, and most direct one, is that we do have some mining houses that have pledged to bring in money, about $100 million in the first quarter of 2024. These are investments going into Mopani copper mines. And when this kind of money comes in, which we're assuming about $50 million of it has already come into the Zambian banking system, it means that we have $50 million in the Zambian banking system, which is available to Zambians to purchase. And when you get an influx of foreign currency like that, automatically it strengthens the Kwacha because the law of supply and demand is such that now there's a good supply and therefore the demand is reduced, which makes the Kwacha gain strength or makes the dollar lose value. But that is usually short term. You find that this kind of impact would last maybe 1 week only. And after 1 week, you see the realities come back into play. The second dynamic is the fact that the Bank of Zambia had increased the statutory reserve ratios from 17% to 26%. What does this mean? It means that if any depositor deposits 100,000 Kwacha in the bank, in the past, 17,000 Kwacha would be kept at Bank of Zambia as a reserve to protect the depositor's interest, to make sure that the bank has capacity to pay back the depositor should they demand their money, and Bank of Zambia acts as the custodian for these reserves. But what that also means is that your economy is being starved of 17% of the deposits that are being made, which would go into revolving fund as far as the economy is concerned, that people are using the money to do business, because all the money that you deposit in your bank is eventually lended out to other people, so that other people can borrow the money. But if 17% goes to Bank of Zambia, then it's short by 17%. So Bank of Zambia would do this for two reasons. One is to make sure that there is security in the banking system, so that depositors can always get their money on demand. And secondly is sometimes to mop up some excess liquidity to try to stabilize the economy. And in this case, moving from 17% to 26% means that 26,000 out of every 100,000 kwacha, which is literally a quarter of the money in circulation, gets mopped up by Bank of Zambia. And in my view, this was more to kind of forcibly reduce demand on the dollar. Because if in the economy 26% is being held by Bank of Zambia, it means that businesses and general Zambians are accessing the other 74%, and that just meets the day-to-day requirements. Pay for your ZESCO, pay for your fuel, pay your workers, pay your rentals, and you don't have excess cash to start importing, which means you don't demand foreign currency. And if you don't demand it, the value of the dollar comes down or the kwacha appreciates.
So this was a smart move by the Bank of Zambia.
It is, yes, and it's not like an innovation. This is what happens. That's what central banks do. They look at the economy, they see where the pressures are, and they try to find ways in which they can ease that pressure, and increasing statutory reserves is one of them. So the Bank of Zambia went to 26% increase in statutory reserves to 26%, which means that they mopped up some liquidity from the economy, and that helps to strengthen the kwacha. Now, that kind of intervention is one that has a kind of staying value of about maybe at the most 1 month. The Bank of Zambia hopes that within 1 month or so, 4 to 6 weeks, the economy will stabilize on its own, and then they can release this hold on liquidity. Because you see, when you take 26% liquidity out of the economy, you are also slowing the economy from developing, because you are stopping businesses from growing, from interacting, because of the lack of liquidity. So it might have a positive effect in stabilizing the value of the kwacha, but a negative effect in terms of promoting economic growth.
Other analysts actually argue that this move would then now because already there's been conversations of not having enough money in circulation. And then now with this move that the Bank of Zambia actually did on the market, they actually thought this was going to make situations worse with regards to money in circulation.
Well, it's a little bit like, when you go see a doctor, they give you an injection. You feel the pain, which makes it worse. You're already feeling pain. Now with the injection, the pain gets worse. But within 2 days, you are cured. So it's a short-term pain for long-term gain. So yes, those are true observations, but there are decisions which we have to make. Now, it is also
does this also have a bearing on inflation?
Yes, it does, in the sense that goods become more expensive, the cost of doing business goes up, because if the bank is taking 26% of its deposits to Bank of Zambia, it's trying to make money with the 74% which it's holding. It has to increase its interest rates, it has to increase its bank charges, which of course makes the cost of doing business in the economy go up. But again, like I was saying earlier, when you get an investment in the economy of $50 million, it improves the kwacha maybe for 1 week or so, and then the kwacha goes back to normal pressures of economic activity. When you increase the statutory reserve ratios, it has a bit more long-lasting effect of maybe 1 month, 2 months at the most, where the Bank of Zambia helps to stabilize the economy, again at the expense of growth, but sometimes it's quite important that you achieve stability, and growth becomes a secondary concern. But then again, we do have a third activity that is going on in our economy, and this is the export proceeds tracking framework, which was announced in the first week of October 2023 by the Secretary to the Treasury. And this framework seeks to ensure that export earnings come into the Zambian economy before they go out of the country. So you export copper, you export sugar, you export cement, you export livestock products, vegetables, cut flowers. You want to receive the payment for those exports in Zambia.
Through a Zambian bank.
Through a Zambian bank, to make sure that your accounting is accurate. Because you could find that there's transfer pricing going on where you are quoting lower export prices here, but on the other side you are getting paid a lot of more money. And this is now fraudulent activity where you are trying to defraud the Zambia Revenue Authority.
So this has been fully implemented.
So this was to be implemented on 1st of January, and listening to the governor of the Bank of Zambia and his team yesterday when they were producing the monetary policy report, it was announced by officials in the Bank of Zambia that this initiative, in the last 45 days, from the beginning, 1st of January of this year to now, towards the end of February, which is 45 to 50 days, they've seen $100 million of export earnings coming in. So again, it has an impact like the $50 million which would have come in through the Mopani investment.
Yeah.
But the advantage of this particular one is that it is daily. It's money which is coming in every day, so it's sustainable. Remember, I said that when you get an investment from somebody, it's a flash. You get it, and then maybe another one will not come after 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever. When you look at the statutory reserve ratios which you've increased, it helps, but it's not the best solution. It's the injection, the pain of the injection. But you can't be on medication all your life. You have to have recovered.
Yeah, I actually remember the first time that you actually talked about this export tracking framework, you did mention that the exporters, were not so for this idea. Does this now mean that they've been left with no choice but to, jump on this new initiative?
Well, let's put it this way. I think there were lots of debates that went on. I personally attended two dialogues at the Bank of Zambia under the auspices of the Private-Public Dialogue Forum, and where these issues were being discussed, what the implications and so forth. And it was very clear that exporters were trying to argue that it was not necessary to put this framework in place. But I think the Bank of Zambia was quite resolute, and their arguments were quite sound. You had exporters saying, if you want to know our export amounts and how much we are being paid, you should get in touch with the importers from those other countries, whether it's China, Switzerland, UK, Europe. They will give you this data. But clearly, businesses in other sovereign countries have no obligation to tell you their business dealings. The Zambian government cannot say, so-and-so limited in China want to know how much you paid. They say it's none of your business.
Yeah, of course.
So we need to capture that data in Zambia at the time of exporting. And that's what the export proceeds tracking framework is. It's to say we need all this data here so that we don't have to ask other people for this information. It should be collected at source, where we are in control as the government of the Republic of Zambia. So to that extent, that argument couldn't be countered by most of our exporters, and therefore these rules and regulations are enforceable because these are rules and regulations set up by the central bank on the basis of, if you want to do business in Zambia, you must follow the Zambian rules, laws, and regulations. And so, yes, as you say, there is no option. This is something that you must follow.
Yeah.
And it's been implemented since the 1st of January. We're seeing $100 million coming in. But again, coming to the appreciation of the kwacha, it's that when you start to see this money coming in, it starts to appreciate. Now, the question is this going to be the same as the money coming in from Mopani copper mines? The investment, will it be for 1 week, 2 weeks, and then it dies? Well, the value of the export proceeds tracking framework is that this is an ongoing process. So once money starts coming in, you open a tap, a hose pipe of foreign currency coming into the economy, and this is very, very sustainable.
Yeah.
So I believe that the appreciation of the kwacha is a combination of all three.
All these three. And it's got nothing to do with speculation that the Bank of Zambia flooded the market with dollars to stabilize things.
in a way, one could say the Bank of Zambia did do that with the money which came in from Mopani copper mines. But you do it, let's look at it like you are going on a long journey. You have no fuel in your car. The nearest petrol station is 5 kilometers away. But there's somebody who's saying, I've got 2.5 liters of fuel. Can I give it to you to help you to get to the nearest fuel station? So whether you get 2.5 liters from some to put in your car, and it takes you 4 kilometers, and then the last 1 kilometer, 5 chaps jump out of the side of the road and say, we'll push your car to the petrol station. Now, this could be the Mopani money which came in the $50 million as the 2.5 liters, and the pushing of the car could be the increase in the statutory reserves for the last half a kilometer. It doesn't matter. What's important is you reach the petrol station and you fill your car with a full tank of fuel.
So of these three that you've given, is there one that outweighs the other, so that now we can ask the question, is this sustainable? Are we going to see the Kwacha now perform like this for a longer period of time?
Yes. What amongst these three, you have immediate, short-term, and long-term.
And long-term.
Immediate was money coming in. Mopani Copper Mines brings in $50 million, $100 million. It immediately goes into the banking system and immediately has an impact on the strengthening of the Kwacha, which is the one where you say, Bank of Zambia has given money to the commercial banks. It's not that it came from Bank of Zambia. It came from an investment into the economy. That's immediate. The short-term is the statutory reserves to reduce the amount of liquidity so that you can't buy dollars. Not that you don't want them, but you don't have the money to buy them. So therefore the demand is being reduced by lack of liquidity. Again, short term. Immediate, then short term. This can only last for 1 month, 2 months. Then after that you are killing the economy. You have to stop it. And then the third one, which is the export proceeds tracking framework, which has a window of 90 days. When you export on the 1st of January, you are expected to bring your export earnings within 90 days. Now, if an exporter decides, I want to leave it to the last minute, it means it's going to come on the 30th of March, 31st of March. So we are about 40 days from the end of March. So we have to wait another 40 days, and then we begin to see the long-term impact of the Kwacha appreciation. So it's a combination of three. The first one, the impact has more or less worn off. The second one is now taking over, which is the increase in the statutory reserves. The third one is going to kick in very aggressively at the end of March, even though Bank of Zambia tell us that $100 million has already come in. So that means that it's already kicking in. There are some exporters who've started to bring in money, maybe not the volumes that we expect, but it's starting.
Yeah, so if I were to ask you your projection, let's say maybe till mid-month March, what do you expect the Kwacha to be trading against the US dollar? Seeing that there's all these positive, I would say sentiments and all these positive activities that are going to, make the Kwacha appreciate against the US dollar. What would be your
my take is
maybe?
That there are two key elements that we have to address. The first one is that the general behavior of human beings is when you are compelled to do something, you first try to resist it. When you realize you can't resist it, you try to find ways how you can circumvent it. In other words, understate your trade, so that it's a way of circumventing. So I think this brings into question how competent, how equipped are we to ensure that what is being exported is actually what is being declared. Because if there's a mismatch between that, then you find that, yes, money is coming in, but it's a fraction of the reflection of what is being exported. So if you came to my factory and you find that I'm exporting every week 20 tons of beef, but you see what is coming in through the bank is the equivalent of 5 tons of beef, then, there's something that you need to be concerned about. So in my view, I think if all, as you know that phrase, all things being equal, if we are able to monitor very accurately what is being exported out of Zambia, my view is that the export tracking framework is likely to generate around $30 million per day of export earnings. Now that's phenomenal.
That's a lot of money.
If you look at the investment,
economy.
yes, if you look at the investment, which we're talking about Mopani Copper Mines, we're talking about what, $50 to $100 million.
Yes.
Under the export proceeds tracking framework, that will only be 3 days of exports. And exports are 365 days, only 3 days. So even start looking at that investment for Mopani as something very small, something you shouldn't even be making too much noise about, because this economy is much bigger than that. So we're looking about $30 million a day. Now, if we are able to realize that, I believe that we are looking at a kwacha dollar value that, if I'm being pessimistic, it should be around 15 kwacha to a dollar by the end of this year. If I'm being
by the end of this year,
yes. If I'm optimistic, it should be single digit. In other words, below 10 kwacha.
Below 10 kwacha.
Yes.
That sounds so, hard to believe, seeing that, okay, because I have a question on drought and whatnot, if that's going to have an effect on that. But maybe we'll get to that a little bit later. So according to you, are saying, look, maybe 15 kwacha, we could be wrapping up the end of the year, 15 kwacha. And this undoubtedly is going to have a huge impact on the economy.
On the economy. You see, because one of the challenges we're going to face, you see, with any kind of activity you do, you have to look at what are the processes. How do you get there? What obstacles are there going to be? What challenges are going to be there? The challenges of people understanding the framework, the challenges of compliance, the challenges of management by the Bank of Zambia, the challenges of the economy. I can be, for example, I can be a small bank, and my customer can come to me and say, Mr. Dodia, I want to put $50 million in your bank. I would say, no, I can't handle that money. It's too much. I'm afraid of it. It'll kill my business. What am I going to do with $50 million? So even you, if you have a small business, you are running a small cantemba, your bank walks in and says, well, I want to give you 2 million kwacha. You get confused. What am I going to do with 2 million? Because I'm turning over 3,000 or 4,000 a day. The money I'm looking for is about 10 to 20,000 kwacha, maybe 50,000 kwacha to recapitalize my business, not 1 million kwacha. So there is the challenge of growth. That growth is not like a light switch where you can switch it on and suddenly there's light and suddenly it's darkness. Growth is about adjusting your business, your economy to embrace that growth. So the challenges I see is that our banks, for example, if they are employing, if you look at the biggest bank in Zambia, having maybe 6,000-7,000 employees, it needs to have 70,000 employees. It needs 10 times more employees than it currently has. Why? Because when you have so much money coming into the economy, you have to lend to everybody. And your capacity to lend is determined by your management, your risk management, your credit management, your loan management, and that requires a lot of human beings to do that. Currently, most businesses are getting loans from banks based on collateral. So you just need one person in the bank who says, oh, you want to borrow 100,000 kwacha, what have you got to give me as security? Oh, I've got a house worth 2 million kwacha. Okay, no problem. I'll give you the 100,000.
So this will also come with job creation and whatnot. But so just to put it out there, so at this rate where we are right now, 22 kwacha, 23 kwacha, we now expect this trend to continue till the end of the year.
I think it should continue, yes, till the end of the year, until you get some kind of equilibrium.
So we can safely say that we once hit the ceiling in as far as the depreciation of the kwacha is concerned.
Absolutely.
For now, it's downward.
It's downward, and I think the biggest challenge we're going to face is our capacity to manage growth, our banking system, and our capacity to absorb growth.
And just there,
even you as a business person, you can't just say I want to borrow money from the bank. You must have a plan.
Maybe just there, Mr. Don't you think? The other challenge would be, considering that we've had some dry spells being experienced across the country, and then there's the looming energy crisis. That's if the situation does not, stabilized already. It's looking like, the rain season is over. But there's that energy crisis issue that we may have to import. That's more dollars going outside the Zambian economy. And then also issues to do in the agriculture sector. We may also need to import just to ensure that we manage the situation. Don't you think those are also going to be challenges with regards to
absolutely.
the performance of the kwacha?
Yes, I think, the economy is not just about exports and what we get out of exports. It's also about just how robust our economy is. And the good thing is that, you see, when you have a strong export mechanism and you are enjoying the fruits of the export earnings, you are generating revenues to support the other areas that are weaker. So, for example, if we talk about poor harvests because of poor rainy seasons, we find that through export earnings and recapitalizing of our economy, the agriculture sector will have access to money to build dams, to do irrigation systems, to mitigate against climate change. So you need to have the capacity to take action to mitigate against the challenges that you have in other sectors. Energy, yes. If we are doing well as an economy, yes, we might not be able to generate more electricity because of bad rainfalls, but we would be in a position to mix our energy sources, with hydroelectric power and possibly solar power, and begin to mix these so that we can become quite resistant to calamities. Should something go wrong in the economy, we have a way of dealing with it because we are not stuck to one single source of energy. But you see, developing an economy has got so many challenges. And you have to program it. What we need to deal with now is how do we recapitalize our economy? How do we grow our economy by having resources to support the private sector to grow? And as the private sector grows, we start tackling the other challenges that come around it. For example, with the resources that we can generate from this export proceeds tracking framework, we can start to develop our railway system. And when we develop our railway system, it means that we can start to do away with road transport across the country, because road transport is dangerous. We've seen so many accidents taking place across the country, and road transport is 25 times more expensive than rail transport. So once we start saying we're moving from road to rail, the high cost of energy is being mitigated against by the low cost of the form of transport, which is the rail transport. You can imagine, like going to Kasama 400 kwacha on a bus, but going for 25 kwacha on a train. There comes a time where you say, forget the bus. I'll use the train. Yes, the train will take 6 hours longer than the bus, but if I'm going from 400 kwacha to 25 kwacha, it's a good investment.
Yeah, and others have argued that this is also killing another economy, you would say. The transporters in that particular, field, they kind of feel, look, if we go down that route,
what happens to us?
What happens to us?
And I think what the life is like that. Just look at growth. You're a human being. You will never remain a child all your life where your parents are feeding you, giving you ice cream. As you as you grow, you lose that childhood.
That's life.
Support, and you start taking on responsibilities.
Mr. Dodia, I've got a very quick question. You talked about this export tracking framework. I would like to know, are the benefits of this particular framework long-term going to outweigh the benefits that come from the mining sector, or this is just part of what's coming from the mining sector? Because we've heard the government time and again, just recently the Minister of Finance made it clear to say, look, the kwacha is performing this bad because we still have issues to sort out in the mining sector. So I'm trying to do a comparison. Are the benefits going to outweigh what is coming through from the mining sector, or this export tracking framework is also part of the mining sector? Players in the mining sector
yes.
also have to conform to this.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, look, if we look at our GDP, how it's organized or formulated, I mean, a huge part of our GDP is because of mining. Mining is our biggest export, and therefore, when we put this export proceeds tracking framework, the mining sector is the one that is going to have the biggest impact in terms of recapitalizing our economy. You know, we are exporting to the tune of $8 to $10 billion a year, which is about $1 billion a month of copper. So if we're having this money coming into our economy and recapitalizing our economy, it will build this economy quite significantly. But the framework is not targeted at a particular industry. It's targeted at an economy. When we use the word export, we don't say mining exports.
But the mining sector will obviously have the largest chunk.
By default, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you have in Shima and there are 3 of us and 2 of us are very small and there's one big guy, the big guy is going to eat 3 lumps of Shima, and you and me are going to eat one, or maybe you are the big guy. You know, so you have to look at it proportionally, right? But it's targeted at the economy, at recapitalizing the economy. But there are other side issues that of concern that we need to be cognizant of. You know, we have the conventions that as a nation we have signed up to: anti-money laundering, anti-drug trafficking, anti-financing of terrorism, anti-terrorism. All those things require that economies must know where the resources from those economies are going to. You can't have a situation where somebody exports product, whether it's mining, whether it's agriculture, whatever it is, $10 million goes out and you have no idea where it has gone.
You have to know where it's going.
Yeah, because you might be funding an insurrection in another country.
Sat Back on RCV News.
My name is Angel Kasabo, and this morning we do host economic analyst Mr. Yusuf Dodia. We are getting his, economic outlook for the year 2024, and already we've made some, he's made some really interesting, predictions with regards to how the kwacha is going to be trading come end of year. All right, so he's with us in studio, and in case you do have a question, the number is 0956-200-490, 0956-200-490. And also a reminder that we are live on Facebook. So for Facebook, it is RCV News. RCV News is a platform where we do post everything current affairs. So come through and let's get interactive on that platform. All right, let's make some headway in our conversation, Mr. Dodia. I think before we went on that short break, there was something that you're trying to put across that I cannot remember. Okay, I think let me just get to my next question. I would like to get your response to this. Just I think it should have been on Sunday, where we did have an article in the News Diggers with a headline, talking about how the ZRA board chairperson Caleb Fundanga said he had agreed with former ZRA Commissioner General Kingsley Chanda that the authority's capacity to audit mining companies remains low. And you have been a little bit, loud on this particular topic. What would be your response to such comments coming through from the board chair?
Okay, I think that...
is he being honest?
I think he's being very straightforward and hitting the nail on the head. Look, the Minister of Finance, State President, in 2021 were alluding to the challenge that we don't have capacity to monitor what the mining sector is doing in terms of production, in terms of processing, in terms of even exports. And of course, the chairman of the Zambia Revenue Authority was just basically amplifying that. And then, you make reference to the former Commissioner General of ZRA, Mr. Kingsley Chanda. He was a man who was on the floor for some time, who has the was in charge of the team and the mechanism for monitoring. Now, if you have the entire government machinery, including the statutory body that is supposed to be monitoring tax collection, telling you that we don't have capacity, I mean, really, you are burying your head in the sand if you are not agreeing to it. So this is clearly something that I think has to be addressed, and I think there is some levels of evidence to support it if you look at how exports are taking place, especially in the mining sector, where you have trucks carrying copper or copper concentrate going from northwestern province through Kaoma, through Mongo, down to Sioma, Sesheke, and out of the country. It's a terrible route in terms of the quality of the roads, but it's being used. And the question is why? And the only plausible answer that makes sense is that there are no weigh bridges on those roads, which means the ability to detect and inspect what is being transported is very low. You have similar arrangement with trucks that might be going through the Pedicle into Luapula province, trucks that are going through Congo and crossing at Inchelenge, and then going through Luwingu, Kasama, and off to the border with Tanzania.
Dar es Salaam. To Nduma.
On our side, Nakonde. Why would transporters use those routes when you have the route via Kapirimposhi and Serenje, Mpika, and so forth? Well, again, these other routes do not have weigh bridges. So it means that trucks are moving and they're not being monitored by the official system. The only monitoring they have is at the border crossings themselves. So there is concern that maybe we are not capturing the data accurately of what is being exported out of Zambia.
And just a question, Mr. Dodia. The mines have been around for a very, very long time. Does this surprise you that up to now we still haven't found proper ways on how we could monitor these guys?
Yes, it does. But you see, we've also had a strong pressure coming from outside. If you look at the protocols, the agreements, the memorandums that we've signed over the years in respect to our extractive industries, we find that there have been strong demands for us not to restrict the movement of money, for export money, not to interfere with the operations of mining companies, and almost giving them a red carpet treatment in terms of their investments and what they get out of those investments. To the extent that, to a large extent, we don't really understand what is really going on. And I would like to parallel this to two other sectors, extractive industries, that suffer the similar challenges. For example, the oil industry. If you look at countries like Angola and others that have offshore oil drilling companies, the oil is being pumped out of the seabed, being pumped into tankers that come to the rigs, and this oil just disappears to Europe and the rest of the world, and the Angolan government is left to the mercy of the exporter to be told what is being exported and quantities and values and so forth. And that's not really a good situation for a government to be in, where you are getting third-hand information or second-hand information. You need to be able to monitor and assess with your own team. We see this in the diamond industry. In fact, in Botswana, the head of state made a statement not too long ago saying, look, we have been partners with a foreign investor in extracting diamonds in Botswana and exporting. The time has come for us to run our own diamond industry independently of the foreign investor, because to a large extent, they want to have the security of saying, we know what is coming out, we know what's being exported, and we know we are getting a fair share of what is going on. And I think that's the same challenge we have in Zambia. and of course this is coming from people who are there on the ground, former Commissioner General ZRA and others that are telling us that we haven't developed the capacity to monitor these things and audit them properly. So having said that, the ability to get exact numbers is a big challenge. Now, if you do an analysis, and I've done that myself several times, where I've counted trucks carrying copper on only one route. And again, I just want to reiterate, the routes are, you have from the copper belt, which is now includes the northwestern province, going via western province to Sesheke. I don't know what trucks are going on that route. I have no idea. I have no idea about the trucks which are going from Copperbelt via Kapirimposhi to Nakonde. I have no idea about the trucks that are going via the Pedicle or Nchelenge through Luwingu, Kasama, out of the country. I have no idea about the trucks which are coming from the Copperbelt to Lusaka and going on the Great East Road off via Malawi and Mozambique. I have no idea about the trucks that are coming via Lusaka and going through Kafue to Chirundu. The only trucks that I have monitored myself is the ones going via Livingstone. And in a space of 6 to 8 hours, my drive from Livingstone to Lusaka, I count 150 trucks carrying copper and probably another 30 or 40 trucks carrying copper concentrate. But 150 trucks represent about $30 million of exports. And then I'm saying to myself, if I forget about the ones going via Nakonde, forget about the ones going via Eastern Province and those coming through Western Province, let's assume these 150 represent Zambia, even though I think it's even more than that, because clearly there's no way that Congo is doing 4 times more production than Zambia. Maybe they could be doing 50% more or maybe twice as much. But at 150 trucks, that's $30 million per day. Why are we not seeing this in our books? Why are we seeing exports of $6 million, $7 million, $6 billion and $7 billion per annum? Which is very low compared to the number of trucks that we are counting. But so clearly there's something wrong. The physical and what is being reported are not adding up. And that seems to support the argument made by the chairman of the Zambia Revenue Authority, including his former Commissioner General.
Yeah, but maybe the question that a layman probably listening to the show is wondering, say, look, but why is it difficult to audit mining companies? Why is it difficult? Because you've talked about the export tracking framework. Does that in any way sort of, I know it doesn't really audit them, but does that give us a fraction of really what's happening to these mining companies?
Well, I'm quite happy that you see it, that, the export proceeds tracking framework is looking at volume, which is being declared. And the question is, start by saying to yourself, okay, this is what is being declared. Can we make sure that what is being declared is being tracked properly? So that's what the export proceeds tracking framework is doing. Alongside it, we are given to understand that the Ministry of Mines is going to put together a team that is going to look at value. In other words, the way bridges might look at the tonnage of copper or the tonnage of concentrate. But the Ministry of Mines, with their team, assessment team, will look at it and say, this is not just copper concentrate. There's gold, there's cobalt, there's extra. So this value that you are attaching to this concentrate is undervalued. Because with our equipment, we are able to monitor that there are other minerals in there which are not being declared. So in other words, that will change the value of the export. And this is very much in line with similar challenges we've had in the past called transfer pricing, where a local company exporting here will export to its own company in Europe. So export copper at $2,000 per ton and record $2,000 per ton and pay taxes on $2,000 per ton. Then from their head office, they sell it to China at $8,000 a ton, which means they've undervalued the export from Zambia. And that's what they call transfer pricing. So you can have the same with concentrate, that in the concentrate here, you are saying this is copper concentrate, low grade, 3%, and give it a very low value. And then where it goes abroad and it's processed, you find you're extracting so many minerals that were not identified or accounted for during the export process. So it is to this extent that the Ministry of Mines, we have been told, are putting together experts and getting equipment, assay equipment, to be able to say what is going out of this country. We have a fairly good understanding of its value and its quantity, so that government's export proceeds tracking framework can be meaningful. And I believe that, yes, we start, they say every journey of 1,000 kilometers starts with a single step. So with this particular step of just monitoring exports, however they are declared, is the first step. But then looking at the quality of the declaration to see, are things being left out? Are the numbers accurate? These are the ones that now the authorities need to start putting teams together. ZRA's export monitoring team, I don't know whether it's an investigative team, should be on the ground to make sure that the numbers which are being declared on the export papers are actually agreeing with the physical cargo that is leaving the country, and that way we'll be able to get the benefits to the Zambian people.
Maybe just there. So then, as a country, how careful should we be, or how can we strike a balance between us wanting to audit these mining companies and also, us not being found in a situation where the mining companies say, you know what, I think we've had enough. I think we will pack up. We'll come when we are ready. Because some of these, regulations that you guys want to, set up, is too much for us. How do we strike a balance really there?
Well, firstly, you need to recognize when you have power. And I think for Zambia, we have in the past undervalued our own power. We are a sovereign nation. The minerals belong to the Zambian economy. And any investor who comes here should be able to follow Zambian law. And in the past, we have been under pressure to undermine ourselves in order to satisfy investors and business houses. But I think in the last 20 or 30 years, the world has evolved. There was one time when Western dominance was very clear. This would have been maybe 40 years ago and beyond. But in the last 30, 40 years, we've seen India, we've seen China, we've seen South America come up in as strong economies that are saying, if the Europeans are not going to give you, or the West is not going to give you the right price for your copper, we'll buy it. So we need to be able to recognize that now we are stronger. And if there's an investor who comes on board and says, I've had enough, I want to leave, we should be able to say thank you very much, because there's another investor who's willing to take that space. And I think evidence is there. If you look at the takeover of KCM some years ago by the previous government, the investors of KCM never said, oh, thank God, you're taking it over, we'll go away. They fought back. They took the matter to court. Because they recognize that that is not just a copper mine, but a gold mine in terms of profitability. And therefore, yes, we've done the sensible thing of saying, let's not continue in the courts of law. Let's deal with this on you are the legitimate investor. Continue investing, but now meet investment commitments. If you fail to meet those commitments, then unfortunately, we have to end our relationship. And there are many other people queuing up who are ready to take up this space. So I think, yes, you want to treat investors fairly. You want to give them an opportunity to run a fair business. But I think investors need to come out of this honeymoon that they've had over the last 50 or 70 years, where they could take advantage of Zambia, of Africa, without giving to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. They must be able to meet the demands of the sovereign nation.
Yeah, of course. Maybe just still sticking with the mining sector, I would also like to get your opinion or your reaction to news coming through from Chidi Labombwe that cobalt metals, of course, backed by these rich, billionaires, has discovered huge copper concentrates around the Mingomba area. They've used this using technology that's AI. And, what was very interesting was that the announcement of this was actually made, I think, in Cape Town in South Africa.
At the Indaba.
At the Indaba. Yes. So, that's actually what's interesting when those investors there and they said, look, in Zambia, we've found huge copper, deposits. Of course, maybe this is that was a very good platform because then investors, they'll start to push in money around speculation and whatnot. But maybe before we even get into that, what's your reaction to this huge copper deposits around the Mingomba area? Does this surprise you? And also maybe the other question would be, this is AI that they used.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe we're a little bit behind as a nation? Because, if it's AI, anyone can buy AI, put resources together, invest, and then maybe go that route.
Well, firstly, I think I'm not surprised. We don't call the northwestern part of Zambia the copper belt for nothing. It's because there is copper there.
Yeah.
Even if you look at the map of Zambia, the pedicle, which is a part of DRC, almost entering into Zambia, it shows that this is an area which for decades, many, many years ago, even the basic geologists knew that this area is rich with minerals. And that's why we had to negotiate with DRC to carve out the shape of Zambia and the shape of Congo in that very complicated area. If you look at the desert countries, you find that the borders are straight lines.
Yeah.
Now ours,
but with us,
that's got lots of little corners. You have got a 70-kilometer strip between Mufulira and the other side, the bridge, the Chembe Bridge in Luapula.
Yeah.
And that 70 kilometers belongs to Congo. So very clearly...
That should have been ours.
That's politics.
I think there should be something there.
So clearly it was known a long time ago. So when I'm not surprised that this...
So it was just an issue of exploration.
Yes. And as the technology becomes more sophisticated, the ability to explore becomes easier. Huge amounts are being spent on being able to sample soils, driven in many ways by the space race. Countries are developing technologies, sending robots to Mars, to the moon, and taking samples and testing for different minerals and so forth, so that we know whether there's water, life can sustain on the moon, or what minerals are there, etc., etc. So those technologies, when you adjust them to use them here, we find that we're able to find minerals that in the past were difficult to identify. So I'm not surprised. But of course, what it does mean for Zambia is that we are looking at two opportunities. Opportunity number one is to extract these minerals and export, which our export proceeds tracking framework is trying to monitor and ensure that the benefits of this extractive industries in any kind of export industry is benefiting the Zambian economy. And the second one is to ask ourselves, how can we shift from exporting raw material to exporting finished products? Now we have ZAMEFA, which was set up in the 1970s. In more recent years, there's been another cable manufacturing investor in Zambia. But if you look at the amount of copper that we are exporting and the amount of copper we are using locally to turn into finished products, I think maybe 1% of the copper which we are exporting is what we are using locally. So I think as a strategic policy development, we need to ask ourselves, who can we engage with to develop industries in Zambia so that we are not exporting? For a very start, why should we be exporting concentrate? Concentrate is soil. Those white bags, you've seen them on the backs of trucks. Should we really be... Already it's bad enough that we're exporting copper cathodes, blister copper, and other forms of copper bars. But now to actually export soil, we're missing a lot from there, which we are unaware of. So I think that the first steps is to try to do all the processing in Zambia for any kind of mineral that is leaving Zambia, not to export soil. And then the second step is to look at a policy on how can we develop primary industries in Zambia, turn copper into copper products, and export copper products.
Yeah, and do you think that deliberate measures, just to...
This is something
to ensure that we move to that direction?
Yes, we have to move to that direction. Of course, it comes with a lot of preconditions.
Yeah, okay.
Do we have good enough transport? Do we have good enough communication? Do we have quality labor? Because if you're going to do an industry that is producing copper products, do you have the technicians and engineers and skills to do it? And these are things that, we have a Ministry of Technology and Science, we have a Ministry of Small and Medium Industry.
That's what they should be doing,
That's what we should be looking at. It's not short term, it's something that will take 10, 15, 20 years to do, but we need to start now. So I believe that going forward, that's what we need to do. But any announcements that there's been some
copper deposits found,
we should be looking at our export earnings and saying, yes, Zambia can export this and Zambia can benefit from those exports. Yes, there are countries which live off other people's money. For example, look at Switzerland. You look; they live on deposits that are coming in from huge companies that have got billions of dollars in the Swiss economy. What is Switzerland doing? They're using that money to lend other people and making money on it. Switzerland is very much a big bank. It's a country which is actually a bank, because it has so much foreign deposits that and the people in Switzerland live very, very good lives based on that. So yes, we may want to develop our own industries and all that. It's part of the long-term program, but in the short term, if we are producing a lot, we're able to export, we bring those export earnings into Zambia, those export earnings will develop the Zambian economy significantly.
And of course, I like how you are talking about it. And it's so easy to think that, look, if this, export tracking framework, is not disturbed, then it's even possible to have, according to explanation, with these copper deposits that have been found at Mingomba, then it's very easy to even, have the kwacha trade at, let's say, for instance, 7 kwacha per dollar.
Yes. Now, it's very interesting that when you are a net import-dependent country, you're looking at a stronger kwacha. You're always trying to say, hey, when are we going to get 1 kwacha equals $1? That's
Is it possible?
The attitude of an import-dependent country. When you're an export-dependent country or export-oriented country, you want your currency to be very weak. Because that's how you bambazonke. Everybody buys from you because they say, no, the Zambian kwacha, with $1, you can buy so many things from Zambia. Then as an exporter, you fight the opposite. You don't want your currency to be strong. You want it to be weak. That way you can control a lot of the world with your export. So you have a country like Zambia, which is about 70-80% import dependent. We want a strong kwacha. You look at a country like China, which is 80% export driven. They're saying devalue our currency. It's 8 yuan to $1, make it 20 yuan to $1. We don't mind, because that way you'll be buying so much from us. Your own industries will collapse. You get my point? So for us, let's not focus too much on the strength of the kwacha. We should be looking at the strategic development and growth of our economy. At the end of the day, what are we doing all these things for? For Zambians to have a better life.
Very true.
As simple as that.
Others would say that, Mr. Dodia, look, we are looking at that because it's a major player when it comes to the importation of fuel. And for an ordinary Zambian, everything depends on fuel. So maybe that's where the conversation is coming from.
True, but at the same time, as a major exporter of copper, the way we are admiring the fuel producers, somebody out there is admiring that Zambia is a very powerful copper producer. So it's a world of different dynamics.
Yeah.
And what's important is, as a nation, we must take care of the capacity to grow our economy and develop our social services for our people, and all this economic activity we see points in that direction.
Yeah.
So yes, our current target now is to strengthen the kwacha, but at the same time we should be looking at building industries as we strengthen our kwacha, because there's a time coming when we're going to make a reverse and say, now we've got very powerful industries, we want our kwacha to be weaker so that everybody imports from Zambia.
Yeah.
You get my point?
Maybe that could be like 40 years from now, or even 50, maybe even 100 years.
Well, I'd like to say maybe in the next 30 years.
Oh.
A little bit out of my time.
Yeah.
I won't be around to see it. But,
all right, the number is 0956 200 490, 0956 200 490. We are getting your text messages and calls on that number for your contributions and questions. The number is 0956 200 490. Mr. Dodia, I would like to get also your expert analysis on a story that came through from Chupata on over the weekend at Inchwala. This is not to say that I'm saying anything bad against my tribal cousins. I was actually very surprised that anything good came out from the east. But hey, something good came out. President Hakainde Hichilema on Saturday last week announced that the two remaining official creditors, China and India, have finally signed Zambia's debt restructuring deal. Now, this was really confusing. When I first heard it and saw it, I've still been trying to break it down. So maybe you are the best person to let us know what this means. But before we do that, let's get a caller. Good morning. You are through to the program.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Douglas calling you from Solwezi.
Yes, Douglas. Go ahead with the contribution.
Good morning, Mr. Dodia.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
Fine.
Great.
My question is, we sell copper to London Stock Exchange, and the London companies, they also sell it to India or China. Why don't we sell direct to India or China? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Douglas, for your question. I think, Mr. Dodia, you could respond to him immediately.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Actually, we don't sell our copper to the London Metal Exchange. The London Metal Exchange is a medium for determining prices. So metal prices are determined by the London Metal Exchange. Cotton prices are determined by the Liverpool Index in Liverpool, in UK. So, of course, the Bazungus have had a lot of influence on setting prices globally. But if you look at the statistics, our biggest buyer of copper is Switzerland. It's our biggest trading partner. And you and I know that there's no copper which goes to Switzerland. So Switzerland is almost like a trading house where they buy the copper, but they say deliver to India, deliver to China, deliver to Vietnam, and so forth. And these prices are around 8,000. It's been hovering between $8,000 and $10,000 per ton is where this copper is going. Now, the question is, why are we not selling directly to the buyers like China and India?
Yeah.
China and India have investments in Zambia in the copper mining industry. And the investors that we have in the mining industries know that a lot of the copper is going to China, but they have contracts with would I call them go-betweens, trading houses that just trade in metals, that will buy metals and then resell those metals to countries out there and companies out there.
So that's how Switzerland makes them.
That's how they make their money. And it's about having cash. You've seen it even here in Zambia. You find somebody who's got a lot of cash is going and buy bags of charcoal. He doesn't produce the charcoal himself, and he goes to sell them at the markets. So the trading houses are very, very important for economic activity to take place. Farmers, ought to spend all their time farming not going to markets, sitting in the markets when their crops are dying because they are not being.
And that's how
tended to.
world economies work.
That's how economies work. So the question really is that at what point are we going to see the shift from Switzerland being our biggest trading partner, especially in the mining industry, and then this shift moving to India, moving to China. And so forth. I think that will happen with time. It's a gradual thing. For us as Zambia, what we ought to be doing is saying, are we getting the best deal? If we are getting the best deal, we should be happy. We shouldn't care who is buying the copper as long as they are paying us the money which we want to get.
Yeah.
So in time, these things will change. You know, companies sign long-term agreements, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year agreements to supply. When those agreements come to an end, the possibility of signing new agreements with new trading partners is always on the table.
Okay. Good morning. You are through to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Nina.
Yes, Nina. Go ahead with the contribution.
Good morning, Mr. Dodia.
Good morning, madam.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. I hope you're good too.
Mr. Dodia, why do you borrow in the first place when you're collecting the copper? Why do you borrow?
Can you come again with the question? Your line is quite bad, Nina.
Okay, let me call back.
Okay, please. Let's pick up another caller. Good morning. You are through to the program.
Yes, good morning, Angel.
Yes, Morgan. How are you doing this morning?
I'm okay, and how are you? And good morning, Yusuf.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Yes, yes.
I think for me, the issue of growing economy, and we are aware that the global, but for us, we have got so many natural resources in our country, which God gave us. We are talking about minerals, and we are talking about exporting more timbers. If we export more, we bring more dollars. We have got shortage of dollars. That's why you have seen that dollars become demand. What are we exporting so that we can bring more dollars? When we are exporting, we are selling in dollars, and dollars come in. Exchange rate will be so good. Now, we don't export. We're importer. Us, we're importer. Everything we are importing. Everything. Clothes, toothpaste is coming from out of the country. How can you expect our dollars to go? So we need more manufacturers. Need more. And even we are talking about exporting copper. We are exporting raw materials. We need a company like ZAMBIA, which is making cables. We get jobs in Zambia. We're exporting, we bring more dollars. That's what we want. Don't export raw materials. And when you talk about these issues that copper which we have, you know, example I can give you that Angola have got oil. But you think Angola you are running this oil. It's the same beauty and shell. We have got mining. How is the one you are running? It's a foreign companies are selling in dollars. As we are taking just cut. So we need to implement more the way Kaunda did. Kaunda and America we are starting for the 9%. So I think thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Morgan, for your contribution. Great to know that you are listening. Let's take another caller. Good morning. You are through to the program.
Thank you. Hello. Good morning.
Yes, your name and where are you calling us from?
Thank you. You're talking to Lung Thomas from Chongwe.
Okay, how's...
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much. No, I think, we Zambians, we have faith and hope in you, more especially we are giving checks and balances to the government of the day, in whichever government comes, because we rely on you, Dodia Rawanenu, my economist, to advise the appropriate government of the day, because most of the time that when we are making meetings with the people who are from a decade, we don't find ourselves there. But we can have ability to speak to improve this country so that Zambia can go in good directions. But now, because the selected few are always for themselves. What do I mean? Most of what is happening today, our current president has got more shares maybe in other countries, other companies, before it was the present time. Now, whatever they are going to do, in that direction. That's an example I've given. There are so many people who have been shared, right? Before they became leaders, yes. Not that they were known, what I mean. Now, what I'm trying to say is, they cannot speak on our behalf as Zambians. They always have their interest first. Have you seen? That's a problem we're having. If you can continue to say, Dodia, before you are in private sector, you are having shares. Now you are in public sector service. You should now also own shares to other persons, so that you can concentrate on saving the Zambian people. On that one, we can go further. Another way, Dodia, advise our president, our government, which is today and which is to come, because we, as I said, we rely on you, why can't we stop this issue of aid which comes into Zambia? Instead of giving us kwacha or currency, whatever they call it in the court, they should give us equipment. Because this is they teach us how to cultivate and how to have our own minerals there. We're going to be in a good country. Then lastly, but not the least, why can't you advise Dodia, this government, to start putting a treasury in a gold reserve, as it was in the previous government, so that you can maintain this issue? Because security and gold, if you can put into Bank of Zambia and all these things, I don't think we are going to have the way we are. Lastly, they were got diaspora, brothers and sisters who are in diaspora there. They have got billions and billions of pounds and dollars lying to themselves there. Why can't we? Why can't we? This is why can't we give them this mine? They can have this mine as indigenous Zambians who are in diaspora to learn these mines. Why are we always for Bazungus? We were, before independence, Zambia was run by Bazungus. There was no development. And after independence, they are also trusting them. What do they have which you cannot do at Dodia? Why can't we? As what mine, any ama indigenous Zambians, ama diaspora, and the few Zambian people are here to learn 100% and so on. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you so much for your contribution, Mr. Dodia. Let's just get all the calls and then have you respond to them.
Sure.
Good morning, you're through to the program.
Good morning.
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from?
Yes, Douglas again from Sorwezi.
Yes, very quickly, Douglas.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know. To know feeling that government bonds, shani, number, tina economist Dodia, vachitako explain. Mudi language is simple ya kwa na fish from government bonds shani. Vachitako understand. Na fatuna for which to participate. No matter mulina that bonds shani shako vata trace tana participate. Meaning, my economist, Finama, accountant, Share, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. He's actually calling for a simpler explanation to government bonds. I don't know if we're just going to have the time for that. But anyway, maybe in your concluding remarks. But let's just get one more caller, one or two more calls, Mr. Dodia, and then we get back to the conversation. 0956 200 490, 0956 200 490. You can call us on that number for your contribution. Okay, let's get this call. Good morning, you are through to the program.
Mr. Kafaudina, Nina here.
Yes, Nina.
Can you able to hear me now?
Yes, we're able to get you.
Oh, okay. Yes, I was asking, let's say, why are we borrowing in the first place? We've got all these resources in our country. Why are we borrowing?
Okay.
Yeah, that's my question. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Nina, for your question.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, I think we'll get maybe one more caller as we go on.
Okay.
Maybe you could start with Nina.
Well, let's start with Nina.
Yeah.
Why are we borrowing when we have all these resources? Well, clearly the resources are not in the hands of government. They're in the hands of private companies. And as a nation, we need to borrow in order to build our roads, to build our schools, to build our hospitals. Many of these big investors invest a lot of money, and for many years they don't register profits. So you find that they're not even paying taxes, corporate taxes, because they are saying we're investing in building this economy, and therefore there are certain tax incentives that they have where if they don't post profits, then they will not pay corporate tax. But they give jobs, they find jobs for our people, they give contracts to Zambian businesses. They, as we've said, they will export, and there'll be some mineral royalty taxes and things like that. But borrowing means why economies borrow is because you want to fast-track development. You can't say, oh, we'll wait until we save up enough money before we start sending our children to medical schools. You'll borrow, build a University of Zambia, and ensure that your people are being educated. So borrowing is, in any business, is part of fast-tracking the development of your business, and for an economy, it's fast-tracking the development of the economy. Our colleagues talk about the fact that we have investors coming in, and when are we going to start adding value to the primary raw materials that are coming in. Yes, we need to build capacity, and in some way we messed ourselves up over the last 20, 30 years, because back in the day we used to have a lot of trades training institutes, a lot of colleges. There was Trades Training Institute in Kasama, the Mansa Trades, Livingston Trades, and so forth. These have started giving diplomas in marketing and so forth, and we've depleted the skills to the extent where some of these constructions that are taking place in the country, we're bringing in laborers, skilled laborers from Zimbabwe, from South Africa, to do jobs which Zambians should have been able to do. So this is why we've now got this Ministry of Technology and Science, the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, to try to rebuild that gap that has been created over the years. And I think that's important. We also look at the challenges of leadership code. I think one of the callers talked about that. You can't serve two masters. You can't be amassing wealth, but at the same time you call yourself a civil servant. Back in the day, we had a situation where if you joined the government, you were compelled to sell your business so that you just focus your loyalty to serving the government in that job. It's something that we need to think about, and I think we broke away from it for one simple reason, that you could come out of government after 40 years of service and then have to go live in a compound. So we did not put in place a mechanism that says you are going to work for government, you're a PS or director. There's a mechanism for making sure you get a house which will be yours. You are going to get a certain percentage of your salary after you retire, so that you can live a good life after leaving government. So again, that's important, to be able to establish those kind of mechanisms, to be able to have loyal civil servants. In terms of as an economy, where are we going? Zambians to run some of these economic activities, value addition in copper and so forth, I think the door is always open. But I think what we need to do is we need to be able to recognize that these things are step by step. Yes, we need to have more ZAMEFAs, more companies that are doing at least primary products with copper before we start looking at more intricate productions of copper, so that instead of exporting raw copper, we are exporting copper products. Raw copper is about $8,000 a ton. A copper product is about $15,000 to $20,000 per ton if it's in the form of cables or some other switches and things like that. So I think that these are some of the things that we need to look into. In terms of really, as a nation, how do we harness our wealth? I believe, many of us have had properties which we inherit from our parents. Grandfather gives you a 100-acre farm. You find you are doing nothing with that farm. At the end, your children inherit it, they cut it into plots and they sell it. So we need to start looking at ourselves and saying, look, when there's an opportunity, how can we turn that opportunity into something productive without undermining ourselves? Because there'll always be somebody there that comes and says, I can give you this money. And you find that one generation develops the wealth, another generation destroys it because they got easy red carpet treatment when their father was making the money. So we need to be able to guide our next generation to take over. So succession planning is very important. Very few of us Zambians leave a will that when I die, this is what's going to happen. You find that at death, there's confusion because you never planned for leaving this earth. And we need to plan for it. So even us as Zambians, we need to change our culture in that respect. But I believe that we have a world now which is more dynamic. We have a world where there are competitive players. There's the Europe, there's North America, there's South America, there's Asia. Asia is even split into different configurations. There's Australasia configuration, and there's within Africa. And I think that we have opportunities as Zambia to look wider than we used to do in the past, to demand more of those investors who come into our country, to give us investment programs which they must commit themselves to. Not what we have seen in the last.
They must fulfill.
Yes, they must fulfill. If an investor says, I'm going to bring in $10 million, I'm going to employ 400 people, I'm going to expand my factory in this way, it must happen. ZDA needs to monitor it and say, if you breach this, then you've breached your investment license. So we need to hold them accountable. And I think the opportunity is now. I just think we need to be focused. We need to plan our future internally. You make a mistake sometimes. The very person you fought against for independence is the same person you are bringing to advise you on how to go forward with your economy. I think that that doesn't make too much sense.
Mr. Dodia, I only have 3 minutes to wrap up. But I think for Douglas, maybe if you could just explain it in a minute. Government bonds, treasury bills.
Yes, government bonds and treasury
in simple language,
bills,
according to him.
Yes, it's the way government borrows money from the public. The government wants you to give them a loan. And the way they get the loan from you is by you buying a treasury bill or government bond. In other words, you are giving the government money and they're giving you a piece of paper to say, after 90 days, we'll give you back your money with an interest. That is treasury bills. Bonds usually go from 1 year to 10 years, 20 years, long-term loans that the government is getting from you. So when the government issues bonds, it means you are buying the bonds by lending them this money. They give you a piece of paper, which is a Congolese paper, saying, one day I'm going to pay you back on such and such a day with this amount of interest. That's how government borrows. So when you hear that government's domestic debt is 200 billion kwacha and more, a lot of it could be government bonds. Some of it treasury bills. And then the maybe a smaller component is where they owe contractors who are grading roads, building schools, supplying food to the prisons, the army. That's another component of government debt to the domestic economy.
Then under another 1 minute, I know this question may be too complex for you to explain it under a minute. The president said China and India have signed, that's the official creditors, to agree to restructure Zambia's debt.
Fantastic. That's something we've been anticipating for many months. In the last 4 years, the dialogue has been around debt restructuring. $6.3 billion was discussed with President Macron and the G20 credit committee. But we do have bilateral debt with India. We have bilateral debt with China. So if the announcements come from the presidents are something to go by, we come and sign this agreement to restructure. Restructure means extending the period in which to pay back. That's basically what it is. Hopefully you can have some debt you can write off. Some debt where you can freeze interest on the debt. So you say you owe this amount of money and let it just be frozen as that amount, no extra payments.
No interest.
These are the achievements that we hope government will be able to resolve very, very soon. Because in the last 3 years, debt servicing allocations in the budget has been 78 billion in 2022.
Of the budget.
48 billion of the budget in 2023, and this year 38 billion. So it's coming down, but all based on what have we agreed with the creditors, the people we owe money. How have we restructured what we have agreed going forward?
We should actually have you for another chat back, I think, on the debt issue. Last question, your 2024 outlook. should Zambians be excited?
Oh, yes,
Or should
we
they
should.
brace themselves?
We
Is
should
this going to be another tough year?
Export proceeds tracking framework kicks in full swing. We should be able to see money coming in at the end of March. We should see the kwacha getting stronger. We should see Zambian businesses being able to access cheaper foreign currency, which means they can import machines, they can import equipment to make sure that their businesses grow. And as I said, I expect the kwacha-dollar relationship to hit 15 kwacha to a dollar, which will be a good boost to all businesses. The only challenge that we have going forwards is to look at the question of energy.
Yeah.
How are we treating energy in Zambia? We have been treating it as a commercial product. I think we need to reflect on that. Maybe we need to start looking at energy as a catalyst for development,
So-
like India, China,
Yeah.
and the southeastern tigers have done.
The other side of the coin, you are seeing that this year the cost of living is going to come down.
It should come down.
It should come
Absolutely.
down.
We're 80% import dependent, and if the kwacha gets stronger, it means the cost of living comes
course.
down.
All right.
And inflation
And
should
inflation
come
is also
down
gonna
into
come
single-digit
down.
figures.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for coming through to today's edition of Chatback. Hopefully, we do have you, for the debt issue and other issues that we haven't, had the conversation on. Thank you so much for coming through.
Chatback on RCV News.